I was driving home from work, cruising down the highway, when my attention was drawn to an unusual sight at the side of the road. To my astonishment, there was a baby in a small box, reminiscent of the ones often depicted in movies, left on doorsteps. I immediately pulled over to verify that I wasn't hallucinating. Approaching the box, my shock only intensified as I discovered a real, crying baby inside. Without hesitation, I picked up the baby, doing my best to soothe their distress. It was unfathomable to me that someone would abandon a child like this. What had become of society's compassion? Just as I was preparing to contact the police to report the incident, my attention was suddenly diverted by an unexpected development. Two masked men were attempting to steal my car. It was a baffling and alarming turn of events. How had they arrived so swiftly? The duo had appeared on a motorcycle, and one of them swiftly dismounted, seizing the opportunity to commandeer my car. The other masked man remained on the motorcycle, ready to make their escape. Panic surged through me as I watched the car thief utilize the keys I had foolishly left inside the vehicle, accelerating away from the scene. I was left sprinting after my car, still clutching the crying baby, desperately shouting, "Hey, stop! Both of you halt!" But my pleas fell on deaf ears. There was no one in the vicinity to offer assistance. Trapped on the highway, I helplessly witnessed my car vanish before my eyes in a matter of seconds, a sinking feeling of anger and frustration washing over me. My car was not only a prized possession, but also my most recent purchase, a brand new Mercedes I had acquired just a month earlier. To compound my distress, my bag and wallet were inside the stolen vehicle. I berated myself for the thoughtless act of leaving the keys inside. With the baby now more settled, thanks to a bottle I had prepared from supplies found in a bag accompanying the child, I knew I had to take action. Placing the baby back into the box where I had found them, I immediately contacted the police to recount the shocking sequence of events. They instructed me to wait for their arrival. Although the baby had found some comfort in the midst of the turmoil while feeding, my anxiety remained unabated. As time continued to pass, I found myself yearning for someone to come and collect the baby so I could embark on my mission to recover my stolen car. An hour dragged on, and though the baby had succumbed to sleep in my arms, no one arrived to retrieve him. The oppressive heat of the day weighed on us, and my impatience grew with every passing minute. Unable to remain idle, I resorted to waving at passing cars, desperately hoping that one of them would stop. My objective was clear. I needed a ride back to town. After what felt like an eternity, a compassionate woman eventually halted her vehicle to offer assistance. Not wanting to complicate matters, I fabricated a story, explaining that my car had broken down, and I needed transportation for both myself and the baby. The woman expressed immediate sympathy, assuring me she would provide the help I required. Grateful for her kindness, I gathered the baby's belongings and climbed into her vehicle. She proved to be incredibly understanding, ferrying us back to my residence. However, upon our arrival, I found myself faced with a dilemma. What should I do next? How could I care for this abandoned baby? My only option was to reach out to the police once more. They promptly arrived at my house, and I relayed the entire situation to them once again. This time, however, the authorities expressed their intention to take custody of the baby. I knew that he would likely end up in foster care, and I couldn't bear the thought of the innocent child being subjected to further abandonment. He had committed no wrongdoings, so I mustered the courage to request that I be allowed to care for him until the case was resolved. Initially hesitant, the police officer eventually agreed, with the condition that we report the situation to the relevant authorities. And thus, I embarked on my journey of taking care of this baby, whose real name remained unknown to me. In the absence of any identifying information, I decided to call him Robert. Robert had undeniably changed my life in ways I never could have foreseen. The profound bond we shared was unlike anything I had experienced before. Watching him slumber peacefully in my arms, like a cherubic angel, warmed my heart. His tiny expressions and endearing gestures were priceless moments that filled each day with joy and wonder. I had fallen head over heels for this sweet little boy, and becoming a mother was something I never thought would be a part of my journey. One day, I decided to introduce Robert to my coworkers at a work gathering. Their excitement to meet him was palpable, but one individual, Adrian, my boss, appeared particularly taken with him. He held Robert affectionately, refusing to relinquish him throughout the event. When it was time to depart, Adrian bestowed a kiss upon Robert and appeared genuinely saddened to say goodbye. I couldn't help but notice this unusual attachment. I confided in Ellie, a coworker, about the situation, but she brushed it off as peculiar without delving further. I couldn't shake the feeling that Adrian's behavior was becoming increasingly strange after that encounter. He began visiting my home regularly to see Robert, sometimes even on weekends, bearing gifts for the baby. Occasionally, he would extend his visits late into the evening, encroaching upon my personal space. As much as I appreciated his gestures, it began to feel suffocating. Realizing I needed to address the situation, I mustered the courage to speak with Adrian one evening while he was playing with Robert. I expressed my gratitude for his fondness toward Robert, but confessed that his frequent visits had become overwhelming for me. I stressed that I cherished my personal space and felt uncomfortable with his extended presence. Adrian seemed embarrassed, and there was a brief silence before he apologized for any inconvenience he had caused. He promptly left. My decision weighed heavily on my conscience, as I felt terrible for disappointing Adrian, who had grown so attached to Robert. Nevertheless, I believed it was the right choice for our well-being. However, shortly after Adrian's departure, a knock at my door heralded the arrival of the police. They informed me that my stolen car remained unrecovered despite their efforts. Additionally, they shared the heartbreaking news that Robert would be placed in foster care. Devastation washed over me as I contemplated losing Robert. The car, which had initially been my primary concern, now paled in comparison to the thought of parting ways with the baby I had come to adore. I couldn't fathom relinquishing him, so I resolved to apply for his adoption. The police officer's assurance that I stood a good chance of gaining custody of Robert due to my role in saving his life filled me with overwhelming happiness. The prospect of sharing my life with Robert felt like a dream come true. Eager to share the wonderful news, I excitedly shared the developments with my colleagues at work, and their congratulations warmed my heart. However, Adrian's reaction was far from what I had expected. He appeared irritated and distressed, as though something had been taken from him. Throughout the day, Adrian maintained an aloof demeanor, pointedly ignoring my attempts at conversation. Although his behavior struck me as odd, I initially attributed it to lingering resentment over my decision to limit his access to Robert. Little did I know that a deeper, more sinister motive was brewing beneath the surface. The following day, I visited the adoption agency to check the status of my application. To my astonishment, the manager disclosed that another couple, Adrian and his wife Ruby, were actively vying for custody of Robert. Shock and indignation coursed through me. How could Adrian, my boss, and someone I had trusted, attempt to take Robert away from me? I immediately confronted him over the phone, vehemently asserting that Robert was my son and I would not yield. Determined to stand my ground and protect Robert, I returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to fight with all my might to ensure that Robert remained with me. Yet, as I approached my house, I suddenly felt a strong force pulling me into a vehicle. Panic welled up as I attempted to scream for help, but my efforts were in vain as darkness enveloped me, and I soon lost consciousness. Upon awakening, I found myself in an unfamiliar and unsettling situation. My hands were bound, and a blindfold obscured my vision. The surroundings were eerily silent and slightly chilly. I called out, seeking answers to my predicament. A chilling voice emerged from the shadows, identifying itself as a mere messenger. The voice conveyed a stark warning, insisting that I relinquish my pursuit of adopting Robert. Fear coursed through me as I realized I was being threatened. Questions swirled in my mind, and I demanded to know the identity of the person behind the voice and their intentions. The blindfold was removed, and someone stood behind me, releasing my restraints. Their chilling message lingered in the air. "Give up the adoption." He left me, fleeing the room, and I took the opportunity to rub my sore hands and regain my composure. Slowly, I ventured out of the room and found myself in an unfamiliar location. With determination, I made my way to the main road and hailed a taxi to return home, all the while haunted by fears for Robert's safety. Thankfully, I discovered that Robert was safe and sound, just as I had left him in the care of the babysitter. I cradled him in my arms and couldn't hold back my tears. The ordeal had left me shaken, and I feared the consequences of going up against a powerful figure like Adrian. As I confided my worries to Robert, he responded with innocent giggles, oblivious to the gravity of the situation. But I quickly dismissed the idea of involving the police, fearing that it might lead to further danger or even my own abduction. For a couple of days, I stayed away from work, grappling with the trauma of the encounter. However, I ultimately resolved to confront Adrian directly. I couldn't allow his harassment to persist unchecked. Filled with anger, I stormed into his office without bothering to knock, and I unleashed my frustrations on him. I yelled, "Who do you think you are to threaten me like this? If you don't cease this harassment, I will not hesitate to report you to the authorities, you unhinged man." To my surprise, Adrian gazed at me for a moment, his demeanor suddenly transformed. In a trembling voice, he revealed a heart-wrenching truth. "For 20 years, my wife and I have been struggling to have a child." Shocked, I demanded, "What?" Adrian proceeded to explain their arduous journey, marked by countless attempts, including expensive IVF procedures, and a subsequent turn to adoption when hope seemed all but lost. Yet, due to their advanced age, they found themselves at the bottom of adoption waiting lists. It was Robert's arrival that had kindled a deep affection within Adrian, and my conversation with the police had offered him a newfound glimmer of hope. He took responsibility for his actions and sincerely apologized, explaining that his intention had only been to threaten me, not to abduct me. I sensed the weight of his guilt, though I chose not to show him any sympathy. I firmly asserted that I would not relinquish my claim to Robert, making it clear that I had made my final decision. Leaving his office, I believed that the situation had been resolved when Adrian withdrew his adoption application a week later. However, during a shopping trip at the mall, I unexpectedly encountered Ruby, Adrian's wife. She stood before a display of baby clothes, her demeanor radiating profound sadness, seemingly without cause. This encounter left me feeling a profound sense of guilt. My thoughts were consumed by Ruby that night, and the following day, it was my turn to sign the final adoption papers that would secure Robert as my own. Yet, when the judge posed the question, "Are you absolutely certain that you wish to adopt this child?" my response took even me by surprise. I hesitated and found myself uttering, "No, I don't think so." The courtroom fell into a stunned silence, and the judge appeared taken aback, believing that I was making a jest. But deep within me, I felt a conviction that this was the right course of action. Robert should not be mine, he rightfully belonged to Adrian and Ruby. In the end, it was they who received custody of Robert, and they were overwhelmed with emotion upon holding him for the first time. Adrian approached me, his eyes filled with gratitude, and said, "You have no idea what this means to us. You are welcome to visit him anytime you wish." My voice quivered as I replied, "I hope you both take wonderful care of him. He was my first child, you know." Adrian's smile conveyed his understanding, and he assured me, "That is a certainty." Adrian also sought to express his gratitude in a unique manner. He enlisted the services of a private investigator to locate my missing car, and one morning, I awoke to find it parked in my driveway. With Robert now in their care, I felt that the circle had been closed, and I was ready to embrace the journey ahead.